Good evening and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, March the 7th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone and remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the HDSB website. I would also like to ask that everyone turn off their device sounds. We have an audience this evening. Welcome, everybody. We don't usually have a lot of people in the gallery. And this evening, I'd like to note that Trustee Daniele is absent and or sends her regrets, and Trustee Gray is on the phone. Oh, and the Superintendent Salmidi is not here this evening, and General Manager Gortmaker is unfortunately unable to be with us this evening. We would like to take a moment to honor the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawattaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Oliver. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. So we're just working with the technology here. So all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So our next section is our Inspire Awards. Everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated: families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. The Inspire Award is given to an individual or group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board, who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Award recipients choose where they would like to receive their award, and this evening we have no presentations, although we did have one award presentation to Tara Moonjet and her team at Pine Grove Public School. Moving on to delegations, we have none this evening, though we do have two presentations this evening. The first presentation is the PAR implementation update. Welcome, Superintendent Blackwell. Would you like to introduce everybody sitting with you this evening?
Yes, I'd be thrilled to introduce the people with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide an opportunity to have the Student Voice Integration Subcommittee share what they're doing, and then give trustees the opportunity to ask any questions, and then provide an opportunity for the students, if they need to go back and leave if they need to, because there'll be other pieces. So from my left, from the outside in, we have Zion, and Zion's from Robinson. We have Haley, is also from Lester B. Pearson. We have Shaza from Lester B. Pearson. Right beside me, I have Galilee. She's from Robinson. and Meg from MM Robinson. And you have seen before Principal Proto, who is the lead of the subcommittee, the Student Voice Subcommittee. So now we're going to turn it over to the students.
My name is Gallie Autumn-Wall, and I'm a Director of Equity and Inclusion on the MM Robinson Student Council. I am also the Director of the Hub, which is like a safe space and mental health oriented club that we started this year. I was also part of the Wellness Week that MM Robinson held back in November and met with the Wellness Board. I am on Best Buddies and the chapter president, so like I help plan activities for that. And I'm also in band. I'm in French immersion, and I'm in the Business Specialist High Skills Major program.
Hi everybody, my name is Meg. I'm a grade 12 student at MM Robinson. I'm involved with Student Council, Link Crew, Relay for Life, and I am president of Athletic Council. So Gallie is going to start us off with our first point today.
We did a Leslie Pearson survey before and after their visit on December 6th to MM Robinson, and we got results from that.
We've also been running focus groups at both schools. So both schools have had focus groups developed by HDSB, the research department, to create safe spaces to talk about how they're feeling, so things they're comfortable with and things they still want to feel more comfortable with.
We also have the Student Voice Committee, which started in December and is comprised of a blend of students from all grades, both schools, and all pathways. We basically ask questions that students have and get direct answers, and we're now starting to plan more events to support our fellow students. For example, brought up in the Mega Student Voice meeting last week, we were talking about closing ceremonies and generally how to make all students comfortable throughout the integration.
So we found that lots of things are being asked to students by students, specifically student leadership. So that'd be like people on student councils, link crew, people like with common faces that you'd see often in the halls. And we're looking for options to message it out to people other than going just through students. So one of the things we've talked about is running town halls. So both schools will be running town halls, which is a place where they get to go and the whole student body gets to talk about situations and how they're feeling about the thing in front of everybody.
Another way we're going to be communicating with the students is that the Student Voice Committee is setting up a social media to answer questions for students. We made this decision based on the reach that we found we have on social media. For example, with Athletic Council, we have the data that shows that's reaching very well. And we were thinking about having like maybe a weekly question just to answer some frequently asked questions and make sure that everyone is getting the same information that they are looking for.
We've also had Link and Pep Crew addressing initial concerns that kids might be asking, so start times and other things that sometimes might slip our minds. So just getting them the initial answers so then we can start spreading those out sooner rather than later. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shazza Najib. I'm a grade 11 student at Lester B. Pearson High School. I'm currently part of the Extended French Immersion Program, the Closing Ceremony Committee, the Extended French Immersion Subcommittee, the Integration Committee, and the Student Voice Subcommittee. I'm also part of clubs such as Environmental Club, Social Justice, Student Parliament, Pep Crew, and Field Hockey.
My name's Haley Hunter, and I am a student at Lester B. Pearson and in the 11th grade. I am a part of the Integration Committee, the Student Voice Committee, as well as heavily involved in the drama at Pearson. And Straza will start us off by talking about something that's exciting about going over to Pearson, or from Pearson.
So talking to Lester B. Pearson students, we've learned that some things Pearson students are excited about and are looking forward to is more course options and all the variety we are going to get next year rather than just having to take onlines. A lot of people are excited about the transition, especially people who have friends at MM Robinson, and for people who don't, they're excited about making new friends. as well as all the opportunities of clubs and teams and sports that we get to be a part of. And overall, the change of environment and being a part of a large school with a nice pool and a great fitness center are all things that we are looking forward to.
Some of the concerns that the Pearson students had were the fact that it's such a big school and we were wondering if we would get lost. So to change that, the grade 9s to 11s had a tour on December 6th just to see the school briefly and did some fun activities at the end of that. Next month, we're going to start doing 360 tours that are being filmed of MM and are being posted on the YouTube. And on May 25th, students can come over for a private tour, as well as April 5th is a parent night for MM students and Lester B. Pearson students. And during late August registration, students can find their classes, making it easier for them to see where they're going at the new semester. Another concern was wondering if they will see any regular faces of teachers, and many will be, but we just have to worry about making sure that everything is fulfilled properly, and that a lot of courses need prerequisites to actually take them. A lot of those are being waived just due to the fact that they're not offered at Pearson, and teachers know that there will be a mixed levels of knowledge through the courses in those classes. Another concern that we had were that the traditions would just be completely waived off from Pearson, and we are trying to take over as many things as possible from Pearson to go to MM. So the Pearson benches for grade 12 students that have been going on since pretty much Pearson started are being taken over. Pearson's Amazing Race at the end of every year is definitely going to happen thanks to Ms. Frodo. And Pearson Review, just an end of the year kind of fun talent show, is being taken over as well. And another good thing we do is text announcements, and we're working on making that possible for MM and Pearson students in the next year. So
my name is Zahran Ogini. I'm a grade 12 student at MMR. I'm also student council president. I'm involved in things like Link Crew. I play on multiple sports as well, including the football team, and I'll be coaching soccer this year. I'm going to be talking about some miscellaneous items and concerns. One of those concerns has to do with spirit wear. We want to try and implement joint spirit wear, so essentially commemorating both schools on our yearly orders of spirit wear. We're still working on design, but we've narrowed it down to a few different designs that we're talking about with our student voice committee. Another issue I'd like to talk about, is our... So I've spoken to a few clubs at MM Robinson, and I've spoken to some student leaders at Pearson as well to try and get in touch with teachers that lead clubs as well as students that lead clubs, and to essentially get a sense of the dynamics of their clubs. So for example, in most cases, most teachers I've spoken to, they've said that more students will only help their clubs, and this was echoed by the students. However, in some cases, there were teachers specifically that would find a little bit more trouble running a club. Specifically, I would like to talk about the debate club at MM Robinson. So the previous sort of system was the teacher had trained students that would continue on to the next year, and then you'd have students that are learning from those trained students. And that teacher would rely on those students that were trained heavily. A new influx of students, according to this teacher, would make selection for that club difficult and continuing that club difficult. So that was just one concern echoed. But for the most part, most clubs would continue as normal and would only benefit from new students. And that's about it for me.
So these students are involved in a couple of activities, but outside of school, it seems. Thank you very much for sharing that. Do you have questions for any of the students at this time?
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you for your presentation, and it's nice to meet you and see you here. I just have a comment. I'm very pleased to hear that you see some really great positives in the merging of the two schools, specifically with your course selection options and ability to join different extracurricular activities, sports, etc. And it sounds like from you that any concerns that your the Pearson students have raised about going over to MMR. You have a really good plan, and there's a good plan by administration to address those and resolve them. So I feel very positive for you and very happy, and thank you for your presentation.
Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation. From a system point of view, I'm hoping that somebody is going to capture all of the things that the MM Robinson students went, oh yeah, that would have been good if we'd always had that. Because the things like finding your classes before the first day probably would be useful everywhere. Because things like we now have in some students like OT, you don't have to go in to do all your pre-registration, so you really do show up the first day. So perhaps, that's one of those things where there should be some kind of a drop-in somewhere in August at some point. Or other little things that you've determined, like every once in a while going through all the clubs and saying, gee, is this working, is it not? So that sounds really good that kind of thing has been done. So just trying to take some of the really fantastic work with all the committees. Man, you guys are doing more than we try and get done. But hopefully can spread it through either Student Senate or through the superintendents back down into the rest of the schools, because good work.
The extra funny thing is I never need a microphone. I know. Push my chair. One of the really big positives from stopping everything and looking at every little process for the entire school year is exactly that, is a reflection, big picture. And as we're answering questions from both MM students and LBP students, things come up like the size of the school. And so that's where we came up with having the video online for students, especially students that are anxious about a big building, to be able to, in their safe space, rewatch that video 100 times if they need to. And there's no extra staffing or money needed once the video is made. There's a lot of those processes that we're saying, stop. Why do we do what we do? Is it going well? If it is, let's leave it. And if not, what do we need to tweak? Because it's a time of change. So let's move forward and mix it up where we need to. And yeah, there's lots of notes and details on all of that.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I have a question through the chair. First of all, I want to echo the comments of the other trustees that have spoken so far. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's just the complexities that you're coping with and the way in which you're addressing every single minute detail is simply amazing. So thank you very much. My question is simply this, and I apologize if I missed this, as I may have cut out earlier on my listening device here, but the rich history of your school at Lester B. Pearson, of their annual awards, their system of awards, their scholarships, the student activity profile would make them eligible for awards. Will that all travel over to MM Robinson? Is there some work in that area being done?
Thank you for your question. The graduation commencement committee at Pearson and at MM are looking at that very thing starting right about now. Pearson in particular, there's people on the commencement committee that are contacting any donors of awards that have been given to say, would they like this to be the final year of that, or can they allow that to continue at MM next year? So yeah, it's something that definitely is on our radar, that we want to make sure that we honor families who have made donations or scholarships and see what their wishes are, and then combine that with MM next year. One of the questions from a grade 12 was, well, grade 11 this year. Next year, can Pearson students wear the red gown and MM students wear the black gown if that's been the preference? Questions like that we're leaving, because we're going to take that to the student body and have a bigger discussion around how they feel about that. But as far as awards, it's already on our radar. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Superintendent Blackwell, Principal Proto, and especially to the students. Thank you for your report. It was great to hear all the positives that are going on, and I just especially want to thank the students for the leadership roles they've taken. As the trustee for Pearson, it's nice to hear that you've thought of all the things that may come up, and I'm sure you'll think of a lot more in the days and months to come, but thank you very much.
Trustee Metropolitansky.
I just wanted to thank you guys for the time and the energy that you've put into this. It's incredible. A lot of times we talk about student voice, and it's used as a buzzword, but I think like this is exactly student voice at its best, and it's really inspirational for myself and for Muktassid as well. And I'm sure that so many other students would be impressed by the work that you guys have done. I think Trustee Harvey Hope mentioned our Student Senate, which if you're not familiar with it, is representatives from all of the schools in the board. They come together and meet once a month, elementary and secondary, and if you guys would like to come speak to them, or if you wanted to be connected to the senators who represent your schools, we could help facilitate that if you wanted to do anything else with messaging. But overall, thank you so much for the work that you've done for the students in your schools.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair of Events. Zion, Haley, Shaza, Galia, and Dalai, and Meg, I want to, as director of the board, I couldn't be prouder of the work you're doing. This is fantastic work, and I think there's work for you guys in world peace after this. But there's a great intangible of the work that you're doing together, and that intangible is, and it's related to a little bit to what Trustee Metropolansky said. It's your role models for all the other students in the school. And being a former principal in a secondary school and a teacher in a secondary school, I can't tell you, and you probably know, how much younger kids, grade 9s, grade 10s, look up to senior kids, and they follow, and they try to replicate what senior kids are doing. You guys are perfect examples and classic examples of what makes Halton great, makes your school, your new school great, and there's a lot of kids watching you, and you're a fantastic example for them all. So on behalf of all the superintendents and myself, I really want to thank you for the work you're doing. And the work you're doing now will reap benefits for years to come. It won't just be next year. It'll be year after year after year, because the schools develop a culture, and you are developing a culture that is invitational, inclusive, and supportive of every single student. So thank you.
Trustee Mansour.
I know it's already been said. I just want to reiterate that the work that you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. Like, to see student voice working like this and then presenting this to the board, it's an amazing thing to see other students coming up and giving this presentation. So yeah, keep doing what you guys are doing. It's amazing, and you guys are on the right track to greatness.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's excellent.
so I get to follow that. Just very quickly, I will give you an update on some of the other work of the committees, and our chair is actually involved in one of the committees. The Artifact and Memorabilia Subcommittee, just in terms of where they are, they have met for hours and hours and hours and are in the process of cataloging every piece of memorabilia. They will have a website that will be available, and they've created a process in terms of selecting items that will be on display and honored at M.M. Robinson High School. So they'll be able to bring some more information on that, but their process is there for you to see in terms of a ranking. They're in the process of doing that, and then they'll be able to bring back some exciting pieces around how people can actually put their name forward for memorabilia that they may have their name on, or something that they'd like in terms of a piece from the school. So we'll have information on that in the near future. And the Celebrations Committee, we have 2 dates to save. Friday, June 1st, and people should put this in their calendar now. Friday, June 1st in the evening, and Saturday, June 2nd in the afternoon. We'll obviously be creating some more detailed information, but we're asking you to save the date because there's some initial planning around generation tournaments, pep rallies, food trucks, and entertainment on the Friday evening. They're still flushing some of those pieces out, and then Saturday there's an open house, and you'll see that this is a really busy slide. Probably as I look at it now, I should have pared down some of the information. But there's a survey that the committee has put out this weekend, and they're trying to reach out in terms of social media, in terms of people that want to attend the events on Friday and or Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, what they'd be interested in participating in. It gives them a chance to put some ideas forward. I will note that here we've got a Twitter account, there's a website, celebratelbp.com, and there's also an email address that's been set up, and I need to correct it, celebratelbp@hgsb.ca, so I will correct that. And that website or that email address will be available for people that have questions. Chair Grabetz, did you want to add anything with that information? But the information is out there, and we'll be pushing it, and it's also on our website. So really excited about that. And anyone that's able to share that link with other people and push it out, the more people that are aware of this event the better it will be, and we're working with our communications department once we've finalized all the details. As you know, this evening there will be a vote on the Aldershot proposed iSTEM program. That's all I'm going to say about that. And as an update in terms of our post-administrative review, we had made a commitment at this board table that we would post the matrix, which really includes excerpts from the report, and then next steps and the plan for those next steps and some timelines on the board website, and it is now there under updates. And finally, just to finish up, since we last brought an update to the board, as we know, there was a media release that was sent out regarding capital funding that we've received from the Ministry of Education. In the spring, we will be sharing the design plans for renovations and additions with the school communities. That will be within the next month. And then April 4th, Burlington, we will be bringing a report regarding Burlington secondary schools and the gifted location report. And as the students just shared with you, on April 5th, Lester B. Pearson families will be welcomed at M.M. Robinson for barbecue, information sessions, and tours. So that's all I have at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none at this time. Don't look so happy.
Someone asked a question.
It's
yeah,
okay,
it's
you
a
asked the
great
kids.
presentation.
You
That's
asked
what
the
it
kids.
means.
Yeah, it's all about the kids.
Wait a minute, I always get asked questions.
I want to thank you for all the work that is going on as we move forward on the PAR implementation. Thank you very much. Okay, our next presentation is the operation plan update, and it's associated with a report later on in the agenda package, report 18044 on page 81 of the board package. So welcome, Associate Director Bogue.
Thank you, Chair Gerbrands. It's my pleasure to provide an update on the operational plan. Trustees will recall I was here in the fall to do sort of a progress report on last year's plan. So this is an update on the work from September up until today. And in fact, there may be some pieces of this report that are looking into the future of this year. Just so that trustees know, we are digging into the operational plan right now and looking at the strategies that are in place for this year, because in 2 board meetings from now, we'll be back with with next year's operational plan. So we're looking at the strategies and what impact they're having on our targets in our multi-year plan and making decisions around whether they need to be modified, changed, beefed up, and those kinds of decisions. So our approach today, because this is the collective work of the senior team, is that we all are playing a role today. We're going to provide really just a snapshot of some of the highlights to give you a bit of a flavor. All of the superintendents are queued up for their parts so that we can motor through this at a fairly good clip, and then we'll be happy to answer questions for trustees after we are completed. The presentation is really divided into the 9 boxes of the matrix, and we're going to start with elementary engagement and achievement.
Good evening. Standing in for Superintendent Salmini this evening. So there's 3 items that I wanted to talk about. The Emergent Literacy Project, first of all. This project focuses on building educator knowledge and understanding of how to support readers and writers at the very beginning stages of literacy by taking an in-depth focus on students who are finding learning to read and write challenging. Educators participate in sessions in which they explore effective practices and do collaborative analysis of student observation, conversations, and work. The feedback from the teams has been extremely positive. The Closing the Gap in Math for Students with LDs. This is the 2nd year collaboration between school programs and student services on this initiative. We have comprehensive learning networks established across the system, learning about and applying evidence-based strategies for supporting students with learning disabilities in learning mathematics. The work involves learning how to understand the psych ed assessment, build a learning profile, precise IEP development, and effective instructional and assessment strategies. We have supporting junior math students with LDs. We started with 19 schools last year. We have 40 additional schools that are participating in the year 1 learning this year, and our goal is to have all the elementary schools participate in the 2-year learning process. We have a number of learning outside the school day opportunities. Primary Math Club, Junior Flexible Thinkers in Math, Literacy Development for primary and junior students, Learning Outside the BOT After School Math and Technology Program for grade 7s and 8s using Sphero technology, Code Summer Learning Program for primary students. It focuses on literacy, math, and experiential learning, and a summer math camp to support students transitioning from grade 6 to 7.
And complementing that in secondary, this evening we've chosen to focus on the fact that there are a great deal of focus groups going on across the system this year with students, with teachers, and with administrators, informing us as to how to best engage students. And some examples would be in our applied classes, in our essential classes with ESLs, programming within our math classes, and in terms of revisioning school in general. Also, our RMS work, the renewed math strategy work, and our INCH going deeper in mathematics continues with a great deal of work on a local Ignite conference. That's a pedagogical strategy that was incorporated and used, and all of our grade 9 math teachers and the part of the RMS strategy participated in that. We have a very healthy Sunset Learning series, not only in math, but in other series. And in fact, there are 6 different Sunset Learning opportunities occurring this semester alone. Thinking Classrooms is also a pedagogical strategy that is very much related with getting out of your desk and not just thinking independently, but thinking collectively and thinking well-being kinesthetic as well, and that is underway. And we too have partnered on the Learning Disabilities Project, and 50% of our high schools are involved this year in the intermediate phase with student services and elementary program, and the other 50% of high schools are scheduled for next year.
So as you know, we've been really focusing on closing the gap in achievement between our students with an IEP and students without. And so there are a number of initiatives you'll see in the report, but here are two that we highlight. One is our structured learning class pilot, which you may recall we talked about opening this January. And this is a focus on students on the autism spectrum, working on Ontario curriculum, but really benefiting from that small class placement. So we have one class in Milton, one class in Burlington, and we've really had a great start for these students. Parents and staff are already reporting great gains for these students. Quotes from parents, things like, my child is finally excited about coming to school, really feeling successful and developing friendships, things that they have struggled with in the past. So a really good start there. And we're involving our research department in evaluating this pilot as we move along to confirm its success. Another focus has been on supporting our teachers of the communication program and our life skills classes. We've been locating these in all these classes in the same schools because quite often our students that are in the communication program in grades 1 and 2 and 3 move on to life skills later on. So we've been supporting teacher learning through network opportunities with a focus on really understanding our learners through a number of sources, including really solid baseline data on their abilities, and then using that to inform our development and implementation of IEPs, as well as solid programming and reporting.
Also up there, knowing the learner, which has very much been a focus under stewardship and resources. So tonight we're highlighting the work specific to All About Me and My Blueprint. Those are two types of software. All About Me is K through 6 and My Blueprint is grades 7 through 12. They both focus on the ability to curate oneself, to set goals and to do reflections, etc., and help students with that whole full life planning, post-secondary planning, etc. This is not the work of just careers teachers or guidance counselors. This is the work of all teachers in terms of the curriculum connections between what is taught and the outside of school connections and the adult work-life connections. And so the in-servicing of that occurs across grades and across all subject areas and specific to the panel and the software in use in the particular place.
In terms of implementation of some much needed curriculum enhancements to our social studies curriculum to better reflect the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations, we've been providing some learning opportunities. We have and will, which focus on curriculum revisions that strengthen the learning connected to Indigenous perspectives, cultures, histories, and contributions. And will also address learning related to treaty education, the residential school system, and the Indian Act. These revisions have been made to the mandatory curriculum policy documents for grades 1 through 6 and 7 and 8, but specifically to the social studies curriculum for grades 4 through 6 and the history curriculum for grades 7 and 8. As well as Canadian World Studies, grade 9 and 10 history, but specifically two revisions to Canadian history since World War I. Second point reflects how we've brought together a team of educators from various roles to develop and design and capture the impact of a very meaningful pilot project built around a particular family of schools, the Craig Kielburger cluster of schools, including that high schools, as well as the feeder schools, with the purpose of building a whole school community's capacity to respond to racism, develop educator knowledge, skills, and attitudes and behaviors to implement anti-racism and ethnocultural policies at the school level in order to develop student and staff capacity for addressing individual and systemic racism at the school level, really with the purpose being of learning of what works and what strategies have the greatest impact in order that we can then magnify those out and carry those out across the system.
The third point up there is our Positive Learning Climate Committee is developing 2 modules, and these are targeted to really make our classrooms, or specifically our elementary classrooms, run like well-oiled machines. In other words, to increase the learning and reduce negative behaviors. We're looking at the 2-day module. Day 1 would look at the emotional supports teachers can leverage, and day 2 would be the organizational supports, and those will be ready for September.
This highlights some of what trustees heard in committee of the whole last week around the many avenues of work happening around student mental health. So the Healthy Transitions program is supporting students, as we know, who engage in a number of transitions across their school experiences. And so the focus here is to help students with those transitions around their coping skills, and being able to handle those transitions well and know themselves in that process. So that program's been getting a lot of use. And then last week you also heard about the tiered approach to mental health programming and the focus that we have there in supporting students as well. So it's a real evidence-based approach, making sure that we're providing support at the various tiers in their development.
Yes, the HR department has for the past 2 or 3 years offered a series of voluntary workshops for managers, supervisors, and school admin on strategies around progressive discipline, performance management, and equitable recruitment. And we've revised those along the way in accordance with the feedback that we've received from those who attend. They have been so well attended that yesterday or earlier this week at HEPA, they asked to have a mini session in a learning carousel for those who haven't been able to attend the scheduled sessions throughout the school year. So we plan to continue those and perhaps to incorporate some of that learning into our onboarding that Associate Director Bogue will outline for us.
This second nugget is something that's evolved this year. We've had a variety of learning opportunities for administrators for many, many years, but the need for a consistent approach around, particularly with young administrators, we've got lots of young folks that walk into the role, and so what are the essential skills and knowledge that they need to hit the ground running? So this onboarding plan is something that will happen for all new admin, and it will start when they're in the pool. In fact, so once they've gone through the process, we will start the onboarding plan, and it consists of modules from all different areas in the board. So there's human resources pieces, special education, health and safety, safe schools, curriculum, and the whole gamut. So we're quite proud of that. We're just starting that. We're rolling it out, in fact, right after the March break as our first run through, and that will continue into next year.
We're really excited to celebrate the collaborative process for the Aldershot design, and we use that as an example of showing how you can gather student voice, community, businesses, staff, trustees, and a whole range of interests, both in physical meetings and meetups, as well as surveys, feedbacks, and Google processes. So we think that's a great design, and really like how we've implemented that, including how we're making a new elementary school with the principals sitting in the audience tonight, taking some of the thinking of that design piece, and also the new high school in Milton that will be coming up the following year. We also are really excited about the task that's been given to us 18 months ago was to develop a shared culture of understanding of what innovation is, and innovation meaning to improve a product, process, or understanding in order to improve learning for students and staff. And so there are 3 examples there on our links. One is the Shift blog, which had, as of today, over 21,000 viewers worldwide have done that, including topics that they've submitted, including makerspace, project-based learning, different shift things happening in our board, ignites, events at the barn, symposiums, and most recently, alternative furniture that was demonstrated at a family of schools meeting. I think it shows especially a real hunger for informal learning and for real-time sharing. The other piece is on a Twitter, again, that's the June 1st, Love My Halton School. In a matter of 1 day, 24 hours, tell us why you love your school and post it. We had over 751 posts and 100,000 hits. So we feel that clearly our world is becoming one that wants the windows open at all times and seeing what's happened. And that's carried over into September, and we can see a real thrust where a number of schools are putting Twitter feeds up and understanding the power of social media. We also have recently been, a lot of people are interested in learning online and learning together. And so we've recently been doing an Empower book study, particularly with an elementary focus on makerspace. And we had a barn event last Thursday evening, and again in 2 weeks we'll have another one, but basically challenging people to try, fail, learn, repeat, and then hopefully victory. But the whole idea is about engagement and encouraging kids and teachers to learn. And then finally, we have a grant from the ministry that allowed us to 50 projects presented their proposals. We selected 18, and 18 based on we can scale up those ideas. And they're working on a 5-month piece with the Rotman I Think program on designing how do you design real engaged learning that gets kids excited, and then that can be scaled up into any classroom. So those are the pieces that we're working on so far.
So you know that we've really been digging in with our individual education plans for our students with special needs, and so you can see that all of our elementary schools have been participating in training for their teachers and administrators, looking at how as a team they come together around the development of those IEPs and make that development meaningful and real for those students, as well as the implementation. And then we've been engaging our CERTs even more deeply in that work so that they can really support those school teams. And you can see that it was a collaborative effort to develop an FAQ document to support them in that work as well.
And the board implemented a new online system in the spring of 2017. And as of the end of February, approximately 50% of all of our funds have been collected online.
Many of you may have heard our reference to the equity lenses over the years. That was all about building the capacity of our staff and creating awareness. We're very much deepening our work in terms of moving to culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy. So this requires a much greater, deeper understanding of the work and how that translates into our school environments. As such, we have an initiative focused on providing school teams with the opportunity to deepen their own critical consciousness to ensure equitable, inclusive, and anti-oppressive classrooms and school cultures, which are not only in alignment with our well-being goals and with our own operational plan, but with the newly minted Ontario's Equity Action Plan. Second of all, we have 30 school leadership teams, which I referenced at our last board meeting, which are working together. These are elementary teams around empowering student leaders to create more expansive and positive spaces in our elementary schools, particularly with respect to creating more gender expansive and LGBTQ plus positive classrooms and spaces. And with the mandate that GSAs, which are in many of our schools, can't be the only place in the school where kids feel safe, that these spaces need to be throughout our buildings and throughout our classrooms, and focusing on strategies to help our educators and our students to create them. We've done that in partnership by providing training to these teams through EGAL Canada. And have challenged each of these schools to implement a plan of action that is culminating tomorrow, where we're bringing together these schools to hear about their projects and to celebrate the work and learn from each of them, so we can learn how to better assist and support schools across our system.
Thank you. I believe I reported this last board meeting, but we had a very successful Arrive and Thrive conference for our newcomer students. That's both elementary, secondary students and elementary, secondary teachers attended this great event. Very successful. We had representation from the federal government of Canada, who was very excited about continuing this initiative in years to come as well.
We are in our second year of administration of the Halton District School Board developed Have Your Say survey. And one of the things that's new this year is that and we've done this in the past, we've offered families the opportunity to participate and access translation support. And we've received 0 requests over a number of years, and that includes our TTFM survey. So we thought we needed to approach it differently, and we have now provided in our top 5 languages other than English. Surveys have been translated. We have 3 schools that are piloting an approach where we're identifying families where English is not spoken at home and providing the survey with their students, with their children to home, and then return to our research department. We are also looking at a change in the administration timeline. Last year, if you'll recall, we administered later in the spring and results came out in the fall. This year, our results, you have till Friday to complete your survey, and if you haven't, you need to go home and do that. The surveys for students will be going back to schools in April, and the reason that we're doing it at this time of year is because schools set goals based on the data that they receive, and now they're going to be able to take a measure with the current students that they have and be able to report back to students and say this is where we are, and be able to share some of that learning. We've made a commitment to share back to all stakeholders by the end of this school year, so it will stay current. And one of the things that we also changed within the community survey, and this came from the trustees, which is a great idea, trying to find out how they heard about the survey to see what our most effective means for reaching out to community members would be.
As you know, I'm currently working on 4 administrative procedures for prevalent medical conditions as a result of PPM 161. And I recently hosted 2 stakeholder consultations to gain input into those procedures. As part of that consultation team, we had paramedics, nurses, representatives from our local health network, parents, union representatives, and principals. And we had a very rich discussion and had lots of feedback, great feedback on those 4 draft procedures. And I hope to have something more finalized to share with you in a couple months.
As it says up there, HDSP works with over 30 different organizations in relationships that range from formal legal partnerships to associations through networks. Roughly, our partnerships can be divided into 4 groups. We have facility partnerships supported by the Community Planning Partnership Guidelines. We have partnerships with external agencies for the provision of services in Ontario schools by regulated health professionals. We have several partnerships with community organizations and charities that are mutually beneficial to the HDSB and the organization with which we partner. And we have industry partners and post-secondary school. And one of our recent highlights up there is some of our partners within that would be considered a facility partnership. The child care partners from Lester B. Pearson to Brant Hills and Lord Elgin to Frontenac. And in the works, we're looking at more hub partnerships. We're seeking partnerships with Halton environmental groups, and we're also have been working with some post-secondary institutions, and we hope to deepen those partnerships as well.
Striving to achieve our 100%, our multi-year plan goal of 100% of our technology-enabled classrooms. We are replacing 250 projectors in our schools. Normally, yes, including the boardroom director, Miller. We're doing this because these projectors are significantly end of life, and these projectors are losing their life quickly. So we felt that we needed to help schools, because if a school lost 20 to 30 of these projectors, it would be very difficult for a school budget to cover these. So we're assisting schools with we're replacing 250 of them. And then the 1,300 devices is actually just the midpoint of the year. This is our rollout dollars that the Board of Education gives for our technology and rollout dollars. So that budget line helps significantly to making sure that schools are able to replace outdated technology. So thank you.
We're very happy and excited this year that as part of the annual Have Our Say survey, there is a staff component for Respectful Workplace. This is a staff survey that was developed by our steering committee, which had representation from Human Resources, Equity, Communications, and multiple union partners. We engaged the assistance of a professional in the area of equity and inclusion, and designed this survey, which is now open. Will also close as part of the Have Your Say survey on March the 9th. And very excited to see the baseline data on gathering our staff's understanding of what it means to be in a respectful workplace, what our policies, current policies and administrative procedures in this area entail, and something of their experiences with the current workplace in the Halton District School Board. We've committed to sharing that feedback back with the system again by June 30th.
I just want to thank my colleagues for their participation. I want to apologize to trustees that we went a little bit over time. We had planned to get through that a little bit more quickly, but I think hopefully you can see the excitement. There's some very deep work happening here. It's impacting the work in our classrooms, and we're very, very proud of it and wanted trustees to be aware. The group will be happy to answer any questions that trustees might have.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. It's very succinct, and I appreciate it. I have a question for Superintendent Ruddick regarding the 4 protocols that she is preparing. I was just wondering if there had been any consultation with students on the preparation of those.
Thank you, through the chair to Trustee Collard. We do indeed have a focus group scheduled to occur later this month on March 27th at Nelson Secondary School. The vice principal there has provided names of students who have those prevalent medical conditions, and we will be seeking their feedback on their own experiences in school and what supports work best for them.
Thank you very much for that.
Seeing no other speakers, thank you very much for your report, everybody. It was excellent. So now we are up to our consent agenda items. I'd like to know if there are any consent agenda items that require discussion. Seeing no one on the speakers list. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda items and receive the information items from March 7th, 2018. Moved by Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Amos. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. So we're just setting all those in favor. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now up to ratification items, action items. Vice Chair L. Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have one motion that I will get for you. Just 1 second here. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board accept the tender from Tri-Green Construction Limited in the amount of $573,000 as contained in tender number RFT 18-20 for the retrofit facilitating a community hub at Harrison Public School, Georgetown, Ontario, with the budget as approved in report 18045, and I so move.
Trustee Gray, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
Excellent. Is there any discussion at all? Seeing none. Now, the topic is not in our our little device here, so we're going to do this traditional style by hand. So all those in favor? Jean? Jean, I need your vocal vote. Okay, well, that motion carries. Yeah, she seconded it, so we'll say it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Well, we'll have a discussion on that. Jean, send us an email. Okay, so we have 3 action items for this evening. The first item is 4.2.1, Audit Committee Recommendations, Report 18037 on page 21 of the board package. This is presented by Trustee Gray. I'll read the motion, put it on the floor, and then move from there. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board authorize the appointment of the external audit firm Deloitte LLP to perform the annual financial statement audit of the 2017-2018 fiscal year. Moved by Trustee Harvey Hope, seconded by Trustee Collard. Trustee Gray, would you like to speak to it? Okay.
Yes, I would just like to say that this report identifies the recommendations approved by the Audit Committee in February of 2018, and that the Audit Committee was very satisfied with the performance in the past of Deloitte and recommends to carry forward.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Trustee Harvey Hope.
This is one of those questions where I think I know the answer, but I'm asking it anyway. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Superintendent Veerman, I presume that this, the budgeted amount for the auditors in last year's budget for this year would cover the newly negotiated auditors' appointment fees.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Seeing no more speakers. All in favor. Okay, and I can't see. That passed unanimously? Thank you very much. Okay, next is number 422, Implementation Aldershot High School Focus Exploration Report 18032 on page 22 of the board package. Welcome back, Superintendent Blackwell, and welcome, Superintendent Truffin. I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board develop and implement an Innovation STEM, iSTEM, program option at Aldershot High School effective September 2019, beginning with students entering grade 9. Moved by Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Oliver. Is there any discussion? Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Just would like to make a comment. An entrepreneur isn't someone who owns a business. It's someone who makes things happen. Thanks to Director and Superintendent Blackwell and all your staff for your entrepreneurial approach to acting outside the box. I emphasize action because thinking is passive, and your team got busy, very busy, and engaged students, parents, staff, the community at large, including business partners, education partners in this journey. That's precisely what your team did in a very short time. You were very proactive in your efforts, and you resolved to identify, investigate, and explore an opportunity to meet the emergent needs of this community and its students, and you disrupted the current model of education delivery, all in the hopes of creating a unique and attractive program that all students can participate in. And for that, I thank you. I will solely be supporting this, and thank you very much.
Okay, Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for this great report. Thank you for the innovative thinking and vision for the school and what it can become, and what education, the direction that the education in general can go in. I've read this report again for the second time, and I focus now on different parts of it. And I just want to commend our students for the tremendous input they've had, the wonderful insights they've shared with us about what education could and should look like in 21st century. I love the comments. I love the recommendations. I love their big picture strategic thinking. I think it gives us a lot of great ideas for how we can shape the program and how things can spill over to other schools. So I just want to thank you and your team and the students for this. It's fantastic. And just to add, I've attended a presentation by, I believe she was a career advisor from Sheridan. It was hosted by Garth Webb. It was an info session for parents. And I was inspired to see how college education is changing and how hands-on it is becoming in areas that were traditionally university type, courses and training. And what I'm reading here is really aimed at that practical, experiential learning, which is very well transitions then into some of the college degree and certificate programs. Very different way of going about high school. So thank you. This is wonderful.
Trustee Gray.
Yes, thank you through the chair to Superintendent Blackwell. I want to just ask a question on page 25 of the report under the budget section. It's indicated that the startup investment startup costs would be ranging in around about $1.7 million, but that there would be subsequent funding requirements as we expanded this program in through grade 10, 11, and 12. It's indicated that the subsequent funding would be much to a much lesser extent. Would you have any predictions on what that may look like? And would this be coming then, therefore, through to the Board of Trustees every year as an additional funding requirement in getting this program off the ground?
Thank you for the question through the chair to Trustee Gray. The additional funding is really around the professional learning and development. And as you note in the program development, we're starting with grade 9. And then annually we will build the grade 10 program, then the grade 11, then the grade 12. So that's where we see that funding being needed in terms of program development and whether it be professional learning and resources. The bulk of the resources will occur in the first year within that $1.7 million.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, please. I wanted also to expand my question into the area of marketing and communication. And I just wanted to make a comment, maybe not so much a question, but a comment that I really hope that this program is fully marketed right across the board and beyond our boundaries, and that there's quite an aggressive and in-depth communication program put in place to support this program being implemented when it comes to our school system at Aldershot.
Through the chair to Trustee Gray, we definitely agree, and we know that we have one of our first pieces of work following a decision, should it be approved, is to re-engage a variety of community partners that are very excited about this and work with them as well to share that messaging and opportunity, and there are quite a few things that we've already been talking about with our communications department as well. So it's to be developed, but very much a focus of what we're using to attract students, which is our ultimate goal.
Very good, and I thank you for your response.
Thank you. Trustee Amos?
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone involved in making this happen, because while we did pass it as a piece of the PAR implementation, it took a lot of work to bring it to this point. And I know there were a lot of people involved, including the community, who was very active and participated in it. So we need to thank everyone, because I believe this is a very exciting opportunity for our board, and I believe it's just the first of what can happen throughout the board. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the implementation of this, so that we can maybe try other things in different parts of our communities throughout Halton. So thank you so much.
Okay, seeing no more speakers, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for all the work that went into this. I know it was a whole team, but a lot of it is you, Superintendent Blackwell, and I know Director Miller would like to say something.
Thank you, Chair Drevens. First of all, I'd like to thank the trustees for showing confidence and faith in the staff and the community in this process and in voting unanimously for this recommendation. I also want to thank the community and the parents, one of whom is in here this evening. We all are fully aware that the PAR was a challenging process for all of us, and it engaged the community in many different ways. A byproduct of that engagement is tonight. The community continued to be engaged, and we all know the expression, it takes a village, and we wholeheartedly believe it takes a village. And this is an example where the community has worked with us, parents, students, and so on, to, I think, transform education. Superintendent Blackwell's PowerPoint a couple of weeks ago showing some of the old classrooms, and many of our classrooms are not like that now, but some are. Some are. And these kids are in a very different climate than all of us went to school in. And this is an interesting and I think a fantastic step forward in helping produce students capable of taking on the world. Halton has always produced students that take on the world, but we've got to keep moving, and this is a great example. So I want to thank the trustees, the parents, the communities, and the students. I especially want to thank my staff, Superintendents Truffin, Newton, Hunt Dibbins, Associate Director Bogue, and the rest of the staff, Superintendent Veerman, and of course, how can I forget Superintendent Pennyfather over there? He's so quiet. But most of all, I want to thank the leadership and the vision and the hard work of Superintendent Blackwell, who led us through this process. I almost used his nickname, but that would be inappropriate. So thank you, everyone involved with this. I am really enthusiastic and looking forward to seeing how this pans out. I'm really super optimistic that this will be a fantastic step forward for the HDSB. So thank you.
Okay, next up is number 423, Student Trustee Policy. Trustees Metropolitansky and Mansour, report 18048 on page 48 of our board package, and I'm going to read the motion before we discuss it. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the trustee policy as appended to report 18048. Moved by Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Would Trustee Metropolitansky and Mansour like to speak to this?
We're just waiting for our PowerPoint to load.
Our computer is going to sleep. We're turning it back on.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're happy to be bringing back our student trustee election policy as an item for action this week. So firstly, just to summarize the key changes that we're making in this policy. So the first aspect is currently in the status quo, students must come to the board office to cast a ballot. We think that that's not accessible, and we've seen that it's not accessible for most students. So we would like to change it so that students can watch speeches and vote online. And the second change is that currently secondary votes are worth 4 times more than their elementary counterparts. And we believe that elementary and secondary students should have equal votes. So we've changed that weighting accordingly. Those are the 2 main changes.
So as for how the electronic voting will work, basically students would receive a code in their HDSP emails along with a link to a website onto which they would go on, enter the code, and be presented with the candidates which they can select and vote for. As for how the code works, each school would get a unique code, and this way you can tally up votes based on schools, but you're also not worrying about privacy concerns regarding who voted for who, because the codes cannot identify individual students.
Yeah, so it would be a randomly generated code, and the email would say the board does not know who you are when you vote. We can't track you as an individual. We just know your school. That's all that students that the board would be able to track. That's all that they would receive. So this policy has, we've been working on it for 2 years now, and we've brought it to Student Senate and to the students of Student Senate for 2 years, and we wanted to share what those students have said. So last year we brought it to our Student Senate, the 2016-17 Student Senate, and the elementary and the secondary student senators unanimously supported equal weighted votes. As a result, we brought that perspective to the Board of Trustees last year, and this Board of Trustees unanimously passed a motion to waive the rules for the previous election, the one that Muqtasid and I got elected in, which allowed equal votes for elementary and secondary students. And that was based on the result that we heard from our Senate last year. We then brought this policy to the current Student Senate. Next slide, please. The 2017-18 Student Senate, and we polled them on the 2 major changes. Firstly, in terms of online voting, we found that 89% of our student senators supported online voting. In terms of the total pool of student senators, there were 57, 51 were in support, 5 abstained, and 1 opposed. And in terms of equal weighted voting, 75% of students, 3/4, supported it, where 43 were in favor, 12 were against, and 2 abstained. Out of the 12 that were against, there was a split between elementary and secondary senators, so there were some elementary senators who opposed it, as well as some secondary senators who opposed the motion. And out of the 43 that supported it, there were both elementary and secondary senators. We have a roughly even split of elementary and secondary senators in our Senate, slightly more elementary. What we also did recently is we conducted a poll of the OSTA-ACO member student trustees, so the student trustees from other school boards, and we asked them about their election policies, as in whether or not they allow elementary students to vote for their student trustee, and if they can, do they have the same or different weighted vote? And we found that Halton is currently the only school board which has unequal voting for elementary and secondary students. And some of the school boards which have equal votes, where they do allow elementary senators or students to vote, are the Toronto District School Board, the York District School Board, Niagara Catholic, Superior Greenstone, and there are a couple others. But a key takeaway for us from speaking to the other student trustees is we are currently the only school board that has different weighting for elementary and secondary students. So this is a policy that we've worked on for 2 years, and for 2 years it's received strong support from students, from the students in our Student Senate, and we've also now heard from our student trustees at other school boards, and this is a policy that we're bringing forth on behalf of those student senators and those students. So we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. The lights are coming on. So we do have a speakers list. We're going to start with Trustee Collard.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you've done on this. I applaud all of the work you've done in order to bring online voting. I do believe it increases accessibility, and so I'm pleased to see this coming. I remain having a concern about the equal weighting because you refer to it as equal votes for elementary and secondary students, but it's not. It's equal weighting per school. And each school has a different number of students. I would much prefer to see one student, one vote. When we vote in a municipal election for trustees or for city councilors or for mayor, it doesn't matter if one polling station gets more votes for one person than another polling station. What matters is the collective vote. One person, one vote. And for that reason, I'm unable to support this motion. I really wish that I could support it, but it's not equal and it's not equitable when you are choosing a school that may have 1,200 students versus a school that may have 100 students and saying that those weights are equal, because in my view, they're not equal. one student, one vote would be equal. And so you say that other school boards have equal voting for students, not for schools. It's a different thing.
Just for the clarification piece about the last part, a number of them do have the equal votes per school as well. Like I know the Toronto District School Board, they allocate every school, elementary and secondary, 3 representatives from those schools, which is a bit different from what we're doing, but the principle is still the same. There are more elementary schools than secondary schools, but they all ultimately have the same vote per school, even in that board.
Trustee Reynolds.
I'll be supporting this report. I appreciate your efforts in listening to the concerns heard around the table. You reflected them in the conversations back with the other student trustees, and you've amended them in this report. So thank you. Thank you for your commitment to the continuous improvement for the future of the student voice. It's appreciated and commendable.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I would like to thank both of you for all the hard work that's gone into this. And I know it hasn't been an easy road because it's come to us a couple times and you've listened to us and you've heard the feedback. And I believe you've incorporated a lot of it. And you've done your due diligence by looking at what other boards have done. And I am going to be supporting this because I do believe that the changes here will actually move the Senate forward for next year. And if there are other changes that may need to be done, they can be done in the future. But I'd really like to commend you with the hard work and everything that you've put into this because I do believe it's a very good report. Thank you.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through your chair to student trustees, thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that you've done and the consultation that you have done with your fellow students and senators. In reading this again, sometimes you have to read something a couple of times to pick out a question. I have a question here on section 3.5C, which states, in assisting the board to achieve a better understanding of educational issues among students, the student trustee will bring student perspective directly to the board and will represent the views of the student senate when participating in board discussions. I totally agree with that. But I'm also recognizing that part of our responsibility, besides academic achievement, is student well-being. And we do have student representation on a number of our committees, and some of them speak directly to the well-being piece of things. So I wonder if this is an appropriate spot to add a better understanding of educational and student well-being issues or something like that.
Yeah, we'd support that for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And question 2, just to clarify, students will view a video of the speeches online, and then they will be casting a vote, correct? So there will be some way to ensure that the video must be watched first before they proceed to voting. Is that correct?
We do our best, like we'd live stream the video and then the link would pop up if they accessed it through their email, but it's the same thing as if students came in person to vote. We can do our best, like we can put them in the room and we can say you can watch their speeches, but you know, they might not listen. They might just choose to discard whatever they listen to. So we would absolutely live stream the speeches and provide the link once the speeches are over. But in terms of ensuring whether or not they actually listen, it's up to the students themselves, but we're really concerned about the accessibility piece.
Right, yeah, I was just thinking sometimes on, some of the agreements you have to scroll down, click I agree or whatever, and then it moves you through the steps. So that could be built in.
Yeah.
And the code that they receive, will the code expire once they've cast a vote? And this is to prevent, multiple votes cast by a person.
These are great points, and we can bring them up with the technology piece because they're working on, I think, like a prototype of the platform to present, like the website, if this were to move forward, and we can bring that up as an idea. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Through Chair Events to Trustee Oliver. Trustee Metropolansky and Trustee Mansour have been working with our IT staff as well, Jamie Sinclair and our IT department. So some of the things that you have brought up have been identified, and they're working through the technical issues now. So the intent is to address those essentially the way that you've described them.
Trustee Graves.
Thank you, and thank you for your work on this policy. The votes in terms of support for student trustees, I've said previously, I would have liked to have seen this go back to Student Senate and see if there could perhaps be a middle ground on what would bring people a little bit closer in terms of being unanimously in support of this this report. So for that reason, I'm not likely to vote for this. But I do note in here to be compliant with our policies and bylaws at HDSP, I believe an amendment is needed because we typically post our policies for a 1-month period for feedback before we accept them. And can someone remind me, have we done that already? Perfect. Okay, thank you. Sorry, we have not done that? Okay.
As I'm aware, I don't believe we have.
So this has not been posted yet. So I'd like to make a motion then to make an amendment, basically just adding the words to the end for posting.
Be aware it'll be unlikely to be implemented for this year then, I believe, on the timing, correct?
Yeah, the reason we're bringing it to this board meeting as an action item is because we would have to announce the election in the rules after the March break, because the election typically occurs at the end of April, and it seems unfair to give students, like less than a month to prepare. So it's a bit of a urgent policy change if it were to be one.
Trustee Harvey Hope.
I understand the urgency, and I do appreciate, well, let me back up a bit. When I was reading through the report with the policy and I was focusing on the bold pieces, I noticed that an awful lot of what we've said in the last few months have been incorporated, and I really appreciate that. And I like the fact that it's easy to read. And I like the fact that, it's the definitions are in there. And as somebody who was part of the policy team that got the policy development policy in place, I can't back off what we put in place, which was the 3 meetings, don't rush it through, 25 days posting. And so that's one thing. And the fact that it showed up again without having seen a draft circulated, like a final, because every time it came before, we kept seeing slight changes. So I can't quite recall, and it might have been in January, which was kind of a blur for me. But knowing in advance it was going to come, whether or not you actually have gone back to not just the student senate, but whether your student senators have gone back to their student councils. Because with all due respect, your student senators, you still have an awful lot of students that are going to be voting versus the 89 or 90 at your student senate versus 18 schools of high school students and a whole lot of grade 7 and 8 schools. And my big issue with this is we've got schools with 7s and 8s, they're going to have 1 vote, which might have 60 students. And we're going to have high schools of 1,200 students, they're going to have 1 vote. And I thought we were getting close to the 1-2, 4-1 was probably too strong. I thought we were getting closer to the 1-2. We also have some schools that will have no representation because the K-5 schools have no representation. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not comfortable with the elementary students overriding all of the secondary students all of the time on every vote for people that they don't have, they may not even understand the whole process at that point. So I think we need to at least have it posted, and we may need to do the same thing we did last year. But policy is goes a lot farther than one election.
Director Miller?
Through you, Chair Drabence, I'd like to comment on that. And I think the 25 days, I think we have to keep in mind it's a challenge for our student trustees. They're not elected for 4 years. They're elected generally for 1 year. Trustee Metropolansky is fortunate that she's been in 2 years, and we've had occasionally one for 2 years. But when we think that student trustees are elected in April-ish, or April, late April, early May, they're elected, they assume the position, they get some orientation. Their first board meeting is in September. These are kids, and these kids are getting their feet wet for some time. I would suspect that it's difficult for them for it to be sustainable year after year after year, because it's different, generally, different student trustees year after year after year. So they may be starting back to zero every year. So I certainly understand what Trustee Harvey Hope is saying, but I'm not sure it's analogous or equitable to have the same conditions placed when the student trustees bring it forward as the trustees who are elected for 4 years versus 1 year. Generally, I mean, there is an exception this time around. So I'm not going to comment on the voting thing. That's, you guys all have to vote however you feel. But I did want to point that out, that this is a great challenge, and I know many of you have acknowledged the work that these two have done, and I know they appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it. I can tell you they have done a great deal of work. They've sat down with me, the IT people, and they brought it back, and they've tried to incorporate it. But now time became the issue. And I suspect whatever happens here. But I suspect we'll be starting at zero again in September. If that's the will of the board, that's the will of the board. But I think people have to be aware of that it's a real challenge for these kids to get it in a year. So.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, the follow-up. I'm looking back. It was not on the February 21st agenda package. So we got it in our packages on Friday. And for a vote tonight. We don't have the whatever. One could say it was posted on Friday. It's not going to, with the change. So if we push this to March 21st for a vote on March 21st, and allow for 14 business days, whatever, and, the 25 days was to make sure nobody plowed it through, which is what, and I may be wrong, maybe on February 7th it was said, we looked at it, I can't look at it really quickly, but again, Friday to Wednesday, for me, seeing the final version isn't long enough. Because what I really want to hear, and I have not yet heard you say, have you gone below Student Senate? And with all due respect, it's not the student trustees policy. It is actually the Halton District School Board's trustees policy about student trustees elections. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand you want to get it finished, and I understand all of that. And so I'm going to try and find a middle ground here. But, we haven't had an opportunity to get some kind of a even basic thing, because the statistics that you show on your charts still hide the fact that it's elementary students overriding secondary students voting it at there. It is. Because if you're saying it's 50-50 of your at the Senate, if you do the whatever. So anyway, the point is that we haven't had a chance to circulate it amongst students generally and or parents.
Chair Drabence, it has been at the board before, at least twice. It's been at the board in this format, and then it went back for changes. The gap between the February 21st and this, the board was aware that there was going to be that gap. I think it was when. So that's right. But the compromise around the March 21st, would that still provide sufficient time?
If I could just first say, we also brought this to Committee of the Whole on January 17th, I believe, and it's the exact same policy. The only difference is like the cover page on the report with the statistics, which we had brought up previously, but yeah, the cover page is new, and I think we received, Trustee Gray made a comment that it said 2 student trustee mentors. Well, we have 3 currently, so we changed that one number. Other than that, the report is the exact same as it's been since January. In terms of it being voted on March 21st, I still think being able to provide our student senators and students more broadly with clarity about the decision as soon as possible is the most important thing. I just need to check. Do you know when our next student senate meeting is?
It's the 20th.
It's the 20th. So ideally, we would like to tell our student senate on the 20th what the change has been.
Okay, Trustee L. Harrison.
Okay, thank you. That's okay. Through you, Madam Chair, I have lots of thoughts. Firstly, thank you for all of the work and iterations and consulting with your colleagues at Student Senate. And I'm really glad this time that you helped me to understand some of the data, because statistics can tell many stories, and I'm grateful that you helped to drill down in terms of who voted which way and so on. That was very helpful. I note that the review date for the policy is 2020. So I guess one of my questions is just procedurally, if this goes forward and doesn't work, whether there's an opportunity to bring that back in advance. And then I wanted to reflect on the e-voting part. My first year as a trustee, students from TA Blakelock were not able to attend at the board meeting to the board office to vote, and they were very, very disappointed. So this conversation about e-voting has been going on for a number of years. I really, I think I'm reflecting what students, at least at Blakelock, are hoping for, to be able to have that opportunity while they also engage in band and sports and all sorts of other things on voting night. So I'm very excited about that part. I hear my colleagues' concerns around the waiting and the posting piece. So I'm not sure this will fly, but it's just being said in an effort to perhaps break a log jam. And I wonder about whether we could approve the processes contained in the policy, or some of the processes contained in the policy, at least for a one-year pilot, if this doesn't go forward. If the policy fails, if we could look at another alternative, particularly around e-voting. Thanks.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through your chair to student trustees and, in essence, all trustees. I'd like to help to resolve this dilemma of the weighting of the vote. I understand Trustee Collard's point. So I'll just share my understanding of how this would work. Section 3.4.d, each school's vote, elementary and secondary, will receive a weight of 1. The way I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, all students who are willing to vote in a school cast a vote. We then look at the votes cast in that school by number for each candidate and pick the highest ranking candidate. That is the vote going forward. So does that not then, in essence, take care of the discrepancy in enrollment numbers? Because whether it's 400 voting and they choose candidate A, or it's 1,200 and they choose candidate A as their top, then they proceed. That candidate proceeds for an overall kind of a, where they rank in Halton, right? That's how I see it, and I think. So I would like to understand what the issue with that is.
Director Miller.
Through your chair, Vince, this is a challenge. I think this has been the committee of the whole. It's been to the board twice, and I think we're in the process of trying to problem solve now and find a solution. these students need a result, whatever the result may be. And I guess that's all I would say. I don't think we can problem solve this at the board table. There can be amendments or stuff, but trying to problem solve this when it's had been at committee of the whole once, 2 board meetings and several meetings with myself, Ms. Dortmaker, Jamie Sinclair, 2 trustees, I think would be a real challenge to try to resolve this here. So that's my 2 cents. The board obviously can do the will of the board, but I think, anyway, that's my 2.
I just want to say that, like we mentioned, we've brought it to Student Senate multiple times last year and this year for 2 years, and this problem-solving discussion or the discussion about alternatives has also been talked about at Student Senate, and I know that there will always be different opinions on this issue, but we discussed them at Student Senate, and what the senators said, and the numbers are clearly we have a majority for it in both years, that students wanted this. They didn't want a partial form of, like a watered down form of more equal weighting, like 2 to 1. They didn't want 1 per person because they felt that would then, give an unnecessary advantage to the secondaries. They just felt that 1 to 1 equal per school was the way that they wanted it, and we got a majority both years in the Senate. So we're bringing this forward because that's what we heard from the students. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've had enough discussion, and we're going to call the question.
You have to vote on a question. You have to have a motion if you want to call the question.
We have a motion on the floor.
No, a point of order. To call the question requires a 2/3 majority.
Okay, I'm going back to the list. Trustee Graves.
Yeah, should this not pass in its current form, I'd be happy to bring a motion that would have just the electronic piece, because I think that's the big piece that everybody is in agreement on. So perhaps we can discuss that after, if we need to.
We would not support that personally, because what we heard from our Senate was what they wanted both components. For them, the electronic piece was important, but equally tied to the issue of equity was they felt the weighting part.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. This is in response to Trustee Oliver's example of the school with 400 students and the school with 1,200 students. If each school only gets 1 vote, then the school with 1,200 students, each student in that school's vote is only worth 1/3 of the vote of a school with 400 students, where their votes would be worth more. And so that doesn't seem equitable, it doesn't seem equal, and it doesn't seem democratic to me. And that is why I'm opposed to it. I believe that 1 student, 1 vote is essential. I don't like the weighting either way. 1 student, 1 vote, and I don't see why that would be a problem for anyone. I think that's the most equitable, fair, and democratic way to do it, and that's why I support that. And I would be supportive of Trustee Graves' suggestion that perhaps we could proceed with the online portion if the motion failed.
Trustee Harvey-Hope.
I'm just going to suggest that in certain other areas where people are worried about different panels, they have votes per panel. We have examples of elementary and secondary being panels. There are other elections where you have to get a majority in both pieces. Thinking of a suggestion. My problem is that in this case, you could have secondaries always being outvoted. There's going to be 17 high schools, give or take 60 schools with, we think, with grade 7s and 8s in them. It's not 400 to 1,200. It's actually more likely 60 to 1,200 because of the 7s and 8s. So I don't know how to do this because, again, if this policy fails, you will have no you will have what is on the record, which will not allow electronic voting unless we do something about it. And that you're saying you'd rather have nothing pass. So I don't know how to get out of this impasse. Anyway, I'm just suggesting that maybe the elementary secondary panel would have been a possibility.
Trustee Oliver.
I'll just add, what I do like about the weighting is that it creates a sense of a community vote. It's who the school puts forward. So it's not, the Halton vote, it's the school's vote, who the school voted for, and that person gets put forward.
Director Miller.
Through you, Chair Drabantz, as Trustee Metropolansky has said, this has gone to Senate last year and this year. And as Trustee Oliver just pointed out, the students that are at Student Senate are selected by their schools and they represent their schools. Yes, there's nuanced issues where they don't get the feedback back to the school on time and so on. And I'm sure that it's not entirely an equal process. The concern I have here is, and I certainly understand the trustees' concerns, but the Student Senate are selected by the students. Student voice gets the kids to the Senate. Student Senate is student voice. And that student voice has said what they want. And I think it's up to the trustees to either agree or disagree with that. But I think what we're trying to do is trying to solve something that is opposed to what the kids said they wanted, which is fine. I think that's fair, and I think that's fair of a Board of Trustees. I absolutely support that. But I don't think we can try to change it round, because that would equally be, in my opinion, unfair, because the two student trustees in front of you would not have that opportunity to go back to Student Senate and said, this is what we're doing, because this is what was suggested at the board table. And so it would be, it's potentially an example of student voice not being paid attention to. I think the students can accept a no or a yes, but to change the thing, to put these two back into that position, to go back to the Student Senate and say, this is what the Board of Trustees would like, is a challenge, is a challenge. So I know I'm speaking, it's their policy, and I know I've been speaking quite a bit, but I'm conscious of the fact that they have done the work. They have gone to Senate. The Senate represents the schools. They've heard student voice. They brought the student voice here, and I think they're prepared to accept whatever the will of the board is. But I think that's where we are at the moment. So.
Okay, so according to Robert's rules, which is what we work under here, you're actually not supposed to speak more than twice on a topic. And I believe that we have also investigated both sides of this topic. So I think it's time that we call the question. Okay.
Our bylaws, point of order, our bylaws do override that. But Robert's rule says twice for 10 minutes, and we've got something different in our bylaws.
So our next speaker, there's one speaker left on the list. So I'm going to cut off talking at that point. Okay, so Trustee Graves.
Thanks. The reason why I do have a concern is because I did listen to the student voice, and after those votes were taken in the fall, we received some emails from student senators expressing concern about the way in this was brought forward and voted on. So I just want to say that I am listening to those voices. And perhaps a question through you, Chair, to our student trustees is, has this policy been back to our student senate in exactly this form? Has this been distributed to student senators? And what is their feeling on this particular sort of rendition of this policy?
What we did with the Student Senate, and we brought it back to them twice this year, is we had them vote on the points, like the specific changes, not the full policy afterwards, because we just didn't have time. It didn't work for when we had to bring it to committee of the whole. But they have seen like the exact form of the change in terms of the change about the weighting, the change about the electronic voting piece. Those have remained consistent, and they've seen them. The only thing they haven't seen is we compromised on that one piece about choosing a candidate from your school. We changed that. That's no longer in it, but the other pieces have remained the same, and the support exists on those points.
So just as a follow-up, I would be happy to support this if I knew that this exact policy had student senate support. So if they were to vote on it and support it, I would be wholeheartedly in support. I don't have all of the evidence that makes me convinced that there's full support from the Senate. I would have, as I said before, I would have liked to have seen more of that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to now vote on this policy. All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, next we're up to communications to the board, beginning with the student trustee reports from Trustee Metropolitansky and Mansour.
Thank you. We don't have much of a report this week because we were preoccupied with this policy, and also our previous Senate meeting occurred right before the last board meeting, and we haven't had a chance to have another Senate meeting yet. The only thing we'll say is that next board meeting, we're planning to do a presentation on the student platform that Osta ACO created, and I know that the chair circulated an email about asking the board to send out a letter of support in favor of that student platform, so we'll be presenting a more detailed report or presentation to the board with more information about that at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that presentation. So we have 4 action items for the March 21st board meeting. The first item is number 521, Milton number 10 school name. Manager Denton, welcome. This is report 18041 on page 56 of the board package.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the trustees, I'm here to present the report on the names for the new Milton number 10 school. As you know from our administrative procedure, we gather suggestions from the community when it comes to naming our schools. And we did that in Milton concerning Milton 10 with suggestion boxes in the local schools and public libraries, as well as an online form through the board website. That happened between January 8th and February 9th. Many names were gathered, especially online. They were sorted through, and then a committee that consisted of Kim Graves, Trustee Graves, Trustee Harvey Hope, Gavin Robertson, who is the principal of the school, who is here with us tonight, Superintendent Jackie Newton, 2 parents from the schools that will be impacted, and they are Kelly McMillan and Mary Cadrick. Both attended the meeting as well, and myself. So, after reviewing all the names, we have put forward 2 names for your consideration for the names for the school. The first name is Viola Desmond Public School. As you may be aware, Viola Desmond was a Nova Scotia person who, through a courageous refusal to accept an act of racial discrimination in a theatre in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, back in 1946, has provided inspiration for many in the Black community. She is also, many people believe that this act of defiance on her part started the civil rights movement in Canada. Interestingly, before Viola Desmond became a successful businesswoman herself, she was a teacher in and taught school in a segregated school in Halifax as well. In December, it was announced that Viola Desmond will be the first female Canadian to be on the $10 bill, and that is actually being unveiled tomorrow in Halifax. The submissions from the community describe Viola Desmond as a Canadian hero who would be an inspirational figure for elementary students, and especially in a growing and increasingly diverse community like Milton. Incidentally, Viola Desmond's act of defiance occurred 9 years before Rosa Parks' refusal to stand up on the bus in Alabama. Also, it is important to note that the Communications Department has made contact with the family of Viola Desmond. Her sister, Wanda Robson, who has actually written a book about her sister, and her husband, Joe, have given their complete support of the name, of using her name for the school. The second name that we put forward is Mamui Public School. That is the Ojibwe translation, loosely translated into either all of us or all together. We have had that meaning and spelling confirmed by Tammy Harwick, our instructional program leader for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit education. The term, of course, is in Ojibwe, which is the language of the Anishinaabe people, who were the first people to reside in the traditional territory of Halton. The Mississaugas of the First Nation who were in this territory first, originally speak the Ojibwe language. Those are the two names that we are the committee is putting forward, and I can provide the list of all the names if you would like by email. So thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions for Manager Denton? Seeing none, I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks. Is there one? Oh, sorry. Trustee Amos.
I'd just like to thank you for bringing such great names forward. It's going to be a difficult decision, but I mean, the fact that we have two such great names that to put on one of our schools that both have huge significance for the communities. I know in 2 weeks it's going to be a difficult vote, but I really appreciate the hard work that the committee brought forward and those who nominated the names.
Thank you very much. Okay, next is information item number 522, trustee correspondence regarding pupil accommodation review guidelines, report 18049 on page 58 of your board package. This is brought forward by Trustee Oliver and Trustee Harvey Hope. Would either one of you like to speak to this? Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Between Late last fall, the Ministry of Education had put forward draft pupil accommodation review guidelines for further consideration and feedback. Our Committee of the Whole had met on February 28th. We had a thorough discussion at the meeting as well as via online input and discussed it at great detail. And a decision was made that there was enough valuable insights, especially given our most recent experience with the Burlington Pupil Accommodation Review, that we felt it was important to share our feedback with the ministry directly. And so the recommendation is that the chair draft a letter that incorporates all the comments from the Board of Trustees.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? Trustee Collard?
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this letter, and I believe that there is some urgency to having the letter written as quickly as possible because there's a deadline for feedback, and so I'd like to make a motion to waive the rules to deal with this matter tonight.
Is there a seconder to this motion? Trustee Oliver? All in favor of waiving? Sorry. All in favor? Okay, Trustee Graves is out of the room, and that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to put the motion on the floor then. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorize the chair to write a letter to the Minister of Education with their feedback on the draft Ministry of Education Pupil Accommodation Review Guidelines. Moved by Trustee Oliver, seconded by Trustee Harvey Hope. Any discussion? Seeing none. Next one. Okay, all in favor. Okay, that carries. Trustee Graves is again out of the room. So it carries unanimously within the room. Thank you very much. Yep. She voted. Okay, the next information item is number 523, School Year Calendar Report 18042 on page 59 of the board package. Welcome, Associate Director Bogue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, before you is the proposed calendar for school year calendar for next year. As trustees know, there is legislation that sort of dictates parameters around the school year calendar, Regulation 304, which references things like the number of instructional days, PA days, exam days, those kinds of things. And one of the requirements is that there is stakeholder consultation, which happens in our board. We pull a committee together with a variety of different stakeholders, all employee groups, parents, school council reps, that sort of thing. So what's before you is the proposed calendar for next year. It very much mimics this year's calendar. One of the key things that we do try to do is align our calendar with the Halton Catholic District School Board as well, which it is at the moment aligned, and we do that to not incur additional costs around transportation. So I think their calendar went last night to their board for first reading, and this is here for trustees, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I noticed that one of the days in particular, the PA Day, falls on our October 22nd, which is our municipal election day. And I'm just wondering if you could perhaps capture for, yes.
If I may, Trustee Reynolds, there was a first draft that came out that had an error.
Oh.
And so trustees know, and we debated this at the calendar committee, whether that October PA Day should be on the election date, or whether we would have it where we traditionally have it, which is on October 5th for next year, which is the Friday before the Thanksgiving weekend. And so that debate did happen, and in the end, to align ourselves with the Catholic Board, we did move it to before Thanksgiving. Yeah, in the original package, there was the wrong calendar, and then General Manager Gortmaker sent out the revised version. Yes. So my apologies for that if you did not get that, and I can certainly share that again with folks. The October date is October 5th rather than the 22nd, and everything else would remain the same.
Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. The first thing I check is 4-day weekends. No, because of the fact that we had the Friday before March break, and it has now it slid off. We now have the Friday before Thanksgiving again, whether it's in or not, and I'm one of the ones who gets it by paper. So yes, I was more than aware of the change. But what I did realize is that there's quite a few in. I can't remember where, but there's a whole slew of 4-day weeks. And I think it's in February and in April because of the Easter Good Friday and Easter Monday and then the PD days and everything else. And the only comment I have ever had about school calendars is the 4-day weeks. And having 3 in a row and having to constantly find a way, especially with the Easter Monday one being not a traditional work holiday usually, and so trying to find accommodation 3 weeks in a row for 1 day a week. That being said, I don't have any issue with the particular dates because having sat on this calendar committee, I realized that, you need 7 days. And I did note they were all Fridays this year, so we don't have any places where it's a Monday, which also caused some feedback. And also, we don't have any control over where Easter falls or where July 1st falls, so we can't squeeze another day out of June or another day. So I know that people do not like us starting before Labor Day. We tried that once. That didn't go over too well. And they also don't like us starting a day after the day after Labor Day, because that threw a lot of people off. So I think this is smooth sailing through all the possible uncharted waters. So for that and for the people who give up of their time to figure this out, thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, I put myself on the list. I actually do have a few questions. I posted the calendar on Facebook because it was a big topic of conversation around the Family Day weekend, and so I have had a couple of questions from the community that I'm going to bring forward. And the first one is, why 2 days in February? And the other question is, from a parent who said it worked very well for the Friday before March break. Why has that changed? So if you could please answer those two questions publicly. Thank you.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, to trustees, and also just reflecting back to Trustee Harvey Hope's comments, one of the challenges that we have, which is it's sort of a good and bad, is when we moved from 6 PA days to 7, there's additional learning time for our staff, which is a good thing, but one of the challenges is finding a suitable spot for that day so that we haven't got it up against another PA day, and we're looking at 4-day weeks, and we're looking at where holidays are, and trying to be sensitive to family schedules and the best learning time for staff. So in February, traditionally that 1st of February, up at the beginning of the February, has been a day that we've had for a long, long time, because that's when semesters turn around in high schools, and that's also when our elementary folks use that day for report card writing. So in placing the February 15th day, again, we tried to back it up against a long weekend so that would provide families with a 4-day weekend. We have had it at March break one year. That was 2 years ago, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And there are some challenges there, and some of the feedback that we receive from administrators is that's not the best time for learning when staff are really thinking about the break, honestly. And it's also a little bit later in the school year. In a perfect world, we'd have more PA days loaded up front earlier in the year so that we can apply that learning throughout the year. But then that becomes a challenge with packing them and stacking them too close together, and also with imbalance between semester 1 and 2. So there's all these different variables at play. But in answer, I think your main question was why before Family Day rather than March break, and I would say the feedback that we received from admin is that the sort of frame of mind for learning is probably better a little bit earlier in February than it is prior to the March break.
Okay, thank you. I thought I was the end of the list, but there are 2 more people on the speakers list now. So, Trustee Gray. We'll try this again. Trustee Gray, we can't hear you. You may have your mute on.
Pardon me, I'll do this through the chair once again. I'm sorry. I wanted to follow up on a comment made by Trustee Reynolds around the October 22nd. I realized that it was answered by Associate Director Bogue in that the use of the October 22nd as a PA day wasn't going to work, as we needed to align with the Catholic School Board. I guess what I would be interested to know is, was it fully supported in the public school board in light of the safety considerations, the disruption to school programming and learning, and parking and access to school facilities? All of these issues posing problems and challenges for our schools when we have elections during the school day when schools are in full operation. So I guess my question once again is, was it fully supported by the public school board, and might we at some point in the future look towards maybe having it then on that election day, a PA day on that election day?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Gray and trustees. And I'll look to Trustee Pappen, who was part of the committee. I would say it wasn't clear that was the date. We talked about both October 5th and October 22nd. One of the advantages, obviously, of having it on that day is that the schools are clear and the kids aren't there, and so that's an advantage. Having said that, one of the advantages of having it on a day when kids are in school is kids are in school and they get to see democracy in action. And although there is a security issue, which we do deal with because we've got adults in our building, it gives opportunity for conversations to happen in classrooms too, when the kids are saying, who are these people and why are they in our school? And there's a learning opportunity that's very authentic. So we did debate it a little bit, Trustee Gray, but it wasn't clear one way or the other. We were sort of leaning on the 22nd because trying to cooperate with the municipalities, we thought that would be helpful for them. But at the end of the day, we landed on the 5th.
Trustee Pappen has...
through the chair to Trustee Gray, as well as what Associate Director Bogue has said, one of the other factors is the majority of voters come in between, I'd say, 4:30 and 6:30. So really, most of the kids have left by that time. So there really shouldn't be that big a concern as far as safety. And the other issue was the alternate forms of voting that we have now. We can vote online in the advance polls, so you really don't have that big a concern, I don't think. And I think that was the idea for a lot of the people around the table. We did put it forward to see if there was any support from the coterminous board, and obviously there wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a follow-up, I also had that concern about the school programs that are affected in the loss of, usually it's a gymnasium or a large meeting venue in some secondary schools. So that was another concern I had in addition to the safety. But thank you so much for both of your comments on the process.
Trustee Graves.
Okay, just thank you. I too put this out to our community in Milton and received some feedback. One of the questions that came from the community was whether or not the early release days that are typically before the winter break and before the summer break are part of the decision as part of this council, and I thought not. I would ask.
Director Mill.
Through you, Chair Drabens, those are collective agreement issues, so they're not part of the calendar committee.
Thank you very much for that response. And then the two comments received, one is about the April 12th date. It was felt that was a little too close to sort of the Easter. That was a lot of time off in a short period of time. And the other one is from Trustee Daniele, one of Trustee Daniele's constituents, and it's something that is unique only to Milton, but the fall fair starts on September 21st. So having a break, there's just some disappointment that it means that those field trips won't be able to happen on that date. So I thought I would just bring that feedback forward. Thank you.
Trustee Pappen.
Sorry, I put my name on the list to respond to Trustee Gray.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other speakers, thank you very much, Associate Director Bogue. Okay, for our last item, information item of the evening, we have number 524, Trustee Distribution and Determination, Report 18043 on page 63 in the board package. Director Miller, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gerbens. This is more for public digestion than for the trustees. It's just to help the public understand what the process is. So I have some notes here that I'll just read that goes into the public record. So under Ontario Regulation 412/00 of the Education Act, school boards are responsible for trustee determination and distribution, D&D calculations. Boards are required by April 3rd, 2018 to file a trustee determination and distribution report with these decisions. The determination portion of the decision involves the overall allocation of trustees for the board. The distribution specifies the geographic areas within the region and the trustee positions to be elected within these regions. MPAC provides the population for electoral group, or PEG, reports to all school boards, which is the basis for determining the total number of trustees and their distribution. Ontario Regulation 412/00 provides the calculations to be used in determining the total number of trustees for the region, the number to be allocated for each municipality, and the electoral quotient by ward for each municipality. Based on the calculation, this board is allocated 11 trustees, the same from the previous election. Similarly, the number of trustees for each municipality remains unchanged from 2014. 4 trustees allocated for Burlington, 4 trustees allocated for Oakville, 2 trustees allocated for Milton, and 1 trustee allocated for Halton Hills. The distribution of trustees for ward is one where there needs to be further discussion and review by trustees. In the report, a number of options for trustee distribution has been provided. These options include status quo and various options. Trustees should be made aware that based on legal opinion, that any variances identified in each option for each trustee, the board should try not to have variances that are greater than 20%, i.e. greater than a 1.20 quotient and less than a 0.80 quotient per trustee. And as I said, they should try. More specifically, the objective in these options is to achieve a quotient of 1.00 per trustee. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Are there any questions at all? Trustee Harvey Hope.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, probably to the director if he knows the answer. If not, maybe somebody could find it for us. The impact report establishes the electoral population. And having actually recently looked up my impact report for my house, one of the things that I was curious about is, one, are we asking all students who register if their support, like, do we ask for proof of their school support on their taxes? And two, one of the comments that was made when we were asking about how this number came up is that they count people versus houses, et cetera. Do we know if they update the impact report? For instance, I've lived in the same house for 18 years. I'm not exactly sure whether impact knows I now have 2 adult children. So whether or not that electoral population has been updated and how it gets updated. So some specific things. And the reason why I'm asking, and normally I wouldn't ask, except we are 2,300 electoral people short of a 12th trustee in a very growing area. So the question is, what numbers are they basing this on, and how did they know? And now, maybe they're using the federal election database, and if that's the case, then maybe they have been updated. But I do know that when we move in, they ask you who lives there, boarding, visitor, lodgers, et cetera, and no one's ever asked me to update. So I'm asking this procedurally.
So I'll begin through you, Chair Grabens to Trustee Harvey Hope. Your first question around asking students what they support for secondary, it doesn't matter. Kids are able to go to a secondary school regardless of who that.
My questions, with all due respect, was not if they're eligible to attend our schools.
Okay.
The question was, do we ask?
We do ask for elementary what their supporters are. In terms of MPAC, I'll ask General Manager Renzella to talk more about it. It's our understanding that they do update the information. Getting information from the federal government for electoral would not be helpful to them, though, because it would not differentiate between public or Catholic supporters. So I don't suppose they would do that. I don't know. I don't suppose they would do it. But presumably they do update it, and because that's their purpose. But I can't speak as to how. So maybe General Manager Renzella.
That's a question that is always asked, and unfortunately, MPAC data needs to be updated accordingly through inputs from the local residents, because they're not going door to door and asking for information. So it's unfortunately, that's why you sometimes see the electoral numbers lower than what the actual population numbers are if you look in totality, because there's a lot of children are missing. People fail to put their names of their children on any form of impact data for whatever reason. And I do recall, and I thought there has been information sent out to ratepayers about updating their information, but I could be wrong. But we are obliged to collate and use the data as per the regs of using impact data.
Trustee Oliver?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have a couple of initial questions. The MPAC electoral population that's quoted for Halton District School Board, I just want to confirm that is just public supporters, public school board supporters? Okay.
And they are age 0 to 99. Okay. So it's everybody.
Right. And when we look at the tables for each municipality with the scenarios, the current school counts and then student location and student enrollment portion of the table, what would account? So I understand that it might be specialized programming where kids are actually placed outside of their home school. That would be one reason to account for a difference in the number of school enrollment in a ward versus student location. I take student location to mean number of students, elementary aged or secondary, living in that ward, and student school enrollment, looking at the students enrolled in the ward schools. So the discrepancy in numbers may be accounted by students being moved away from homeschool for a program. Is there anything else that could account for that?
Optional attendance, students moving to other boards. And there could be situations that in some circumstances, some students may be going to another school board, and they're still captured as English public supporting ratepayers. So you're going to get those discrepancies.
Through your chair to bench, to give you an example, we have some students from Peel who attend some of our schools in East Oakville. So,
and again, the table itself is just for trustees' information to make in terms of a decision making factor. Again, the issue is the impact data. The impact, we've generated the rest because that's been asked of us before, as how many schools, how many students, by location, for your own information and for our own use in determining what wards trustees will be representing.
So in taking all of this information in and looking at the different scenarios, I think the objective is that we want to make sure that there is good electoral representation, correct? That we are within that magic quotient, right? Within the 20% deviation or variance. But in selecting the scenarios, I think it's important that we think through some criteria that would help to guide us in which scenario makes sense, because we're looking at geographic boundaries, we're looking at neighborhoods and communities, we're looking at school boundaries, which do shift with time, but often they're stable enough or are don't change that much that, it would shift over into another ward.
Trustee Oliver, you're out of time.
Thank you. So, there.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. In the third recommendation, at the bottom it says that the town of Oakville be designated as the lead municipality. I'm guessing that's because there's the most population there. But I wonder what that really means in terms of...
It's Oakville. You are, through the chair to the rest of the committee, the trustees, the initial report that was circulated on Friday to trustees was sent before we got updated information from MPAC on the PEG reports, so we had to go back and redo this entire report, and it was sent out Monday through Manager Gail Gortmaker. So it is the town of Oakville is the lead municipality, and they would be managing the electoral process.
Do you have a follow-up?
Because it's the largest population. And can I just explain for the public's purpose, because they may not have seen it on a website or whatever. This report was produced and sent out to trustees Friday around noon, based on what MPAC had provided to us. MPAC came back to us at 3 o'clock, and I believe it happened at other boards around the province with different data and different information. We had already publicly posted the report and sent it out to trustees, so we had to quickly redo the report based on the new numbers that MPAC had provided to us through their PEG reports, and that is why that's one of the reasons this was a slip up. We missed it, but I think the public needs to know that there may be more than one version of the report out there. This is the latest one. So,
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Having been through this once before, I know how difficult it is, especially when you're looking at changes in ward boundaries. Oakville now has 7 wards, and Milton has been reduced from 8 to 4. And as a Burlington trustee, I look to the trustees from Oakville for guidance on Oakville. I look to the trustees from Milton for their guidance on Milton, because you know your communities better than I do. And so, yes, we do have to have more in-depth conversation about what works best in your communities. I can tell you that in Burlington, in the last 4 elections, the ward combinations have changed in every single election. And there have been complaints from the constituency that every time it changes, they don't know who they're voting for, because they thought they would be voting for the incumbent who is running again, but the proposed incumbent, but that person is no longer running in their ward because the ward combinations have changed. And I do think it's important to provide as much stability as possible when we determine which boards to combine. It's going to be awkward in Oakville, but we look for your guidance in that. The other thing that I think people need to bear in mind is that in our newer communities, many of the families are not electors because they're not Canadian citizens. It doesn't mean that their children aren't in our schools. It means they're not included in the impact data. And so while some of the communities may look like they're smaller, they're not smaller. They could, in fact, be larger because maybe 30 to 35% of the people living there are ineligible to vote. So that is a very important consideration, because you're going to be serving those families whether or not they can vote. And to me, that's a very important piece. You wouldn't deny somebody the service just because they aren't eligible to vote.
Okay, Trustee Graves.
Thank you. And so with that introduction from Trustee Collard, I thought I would just give a little bit of perspective on Milton, so you had an idea of what you were looking at. But the option that most closely resembles status quo for Milton is wards 1 and 2 together, and the dividing line would be along Derry Road, and then 3 and 4 together below that. And what it does is, if you can imagine the way it is right now, it just adds 1 school to what's currently Trustee Daniele's area, and some more constituents, but not another school on the east side. And as we know, in the south end, there are going to be more schools being built, so it balances quite well in that way, and that's likely the one that I will be leaning towards in 2 weeks' time. And I would appreciate, yes, insights in particularly, I guess, Oakville and Burlington, because Halton Hills is quite straightforward. Thank you.
Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Is there any precedent for non-contiguous wards, i.e. not connecting? So some of the options have, Ward 2 Oakville connected with Ward 6, which are kind of southwest and northeast, which doesn't seem really good, for lack of more technical terms. So are there any precedents for that sort of arrangement?
There might be. I'm not aware. Again, we're trying to look at in the context of trying to get the trustee representation close to that 1 quotient. And, I wish it was as easy as Milton or even Halton Hills, where it's 1. As I said, we had 8 options for Burlington, 8 options for Oakville, and in some cases we had 2 trustees representing a grouping of wards. So again, we're just coming up with some ideas. I don't know if there's anything else. I know the Catholic Board has, and it was not introduced, but in Oakville they have their trustees running at large. So It's not included as an option, but that's something that you may want to consider if you want to consider it.
Trustee Pappen?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Manager Ranzella. I have a question about option 6 and 7 in both Burlington and Oakville, where you have 2 trustees representing a particular area. And I was wondering why that wasn't done in Milton as well, like having the, 2 represent. You have 2 trustees for the city, so.
Well, through the chair to Trustee Pappen. Well, there's only 4 wards in Milton, so you're more or less electing 2 trustees at large. So there's only 2 of them, so it just works out that way. And but you would have 2 trustees representing 4 wards, right. So they would be at large.
Right. I was just wondering why there's no kind of consistency. Like if we do decide that option for Burlington or for Oakville, there's no option to have it consistent right through the whole.
I think if you look at the numbers, the ability for Milton to approach that quotient of 1 was better relative to some of the other options in Burlington and Oakville. But those are options. If you feel that needs to be done, it'll be looked at. But again, we were trying to look at it in the context. This is a carryover from the previous election as well, and where they had 8 wards. And we just kind of said, can we manage that because of the discrepancy of some awards or trustees having a really small population in their ward or the representing ward versus some other ones in the community that had over 20% variance. So you can see that in there. In Milton, it wasn't the case.
Okay, Trustee Harvey Hope.
I can't quite recall what my question was, sorry.
Okay, so there are no more speakers on the list. And I have a question, though, for actually either one of you. So the CBC actually contacted me, and we've also seen an article in the paper about using MPAC data versus using the 2016 census data, because I guess there are some school boards that are refuting the numbers because their areas seem to be growing, but the MPAC data does not reflect that. So I was wondering if you could please explain why we're using MPAC data as opposed to the census data.
Through you, Chair of Events, to you, Chair of Events, there's actually 3 reasons census data is not used. The first one is the most recent data recent census data is from 2016, particularly in Halton. That would pose some real problems. You'd have to do it from yesterday in Halton to have the accurate information. The second reason is the data is not disaggregated by wards. It's just a general kind of, so some would have, I guess the board would be responsible to figuring all that out, and that would be an extremely difficult exercise to do. And third, the most important part about the census data is it does not differentiate between Catholic, public, French Catholic, or French public supporters. So it would be very difficult to determine who is eligible to vote for the trustees. So those are the 3 reasons.
Oh, thank you.
My comment was that I was still active speaker while you were talking, which probably messed up the cameras. But anyway, I did remember my comment. To Trustee Collard's point about people who've moved in and may or may not be able to vote, the impact data is based on the owner of the property or the tenant. So to my best of my recollection, municipal elections are different than federal and provincial. So I believe that people are allowed to vote in municipal elections without being allowed to vote in provincial or federal. But in a lot of cases, these people are renting, so the owner actually has the electoral vote process.
I don't know at this point if that question can be answered or if we can do anything about it. So I think that seeing no more speakers on the list, we're just going to move on. So we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Okay, so now we're up to 2 information items for the evening. Hopefully they won't take forever. We've already had a presentation actually on the operational plan, so the report is sitting in that spot. So we don't need to see you again right now, Associate Director Boak. But we will move on to number 532, Udinawi enrollment issues. Report 18046 on page 86 of your board package. Welcome, Superintendent Ruddick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you all know, we have significant growth pressures in North Oakville and in particular in the Udinawi school catchment area. For September, we are adding an additional 6 portables, taking it to 18 portables and a total capacity of 1,190 students. They're currently sitting at a projection of 1,180 students. Udinawi's capacity is for 53 classes in total. In fact, I took a look at their organization today, and they're organized for 52 classes. So they do still have a little bit of room for growth, but we do want to plan ahead in the event that they reach full capacity at some point throughout the next school year. So after deliberating quite a few different options, we see the best option to be redirecting both English track and French immersion track students to Palermo Public School. It is at 94% utilization for next year. They have 3 portables on site, so they can manage some in-year growth. They will have a capacity of 787 students, and their current projection is for 675. So if we do reach the point where Udinawi needs to be clothed for new growth, Palermo does have the room to take them, and the school board would provide transportation to those families. We do have funding for a new school in that area, and it's scheduled to open for September 2019. And so we anticipate a boundary review to be conducted in the fall of September 2018, and that will, of course, impact both the students in the Udinawi community and students, if any, redirected to Palermo. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. Superintendent Ruddick called me and let me know this, and it makes perfect sense. The fact that we don't have our new school that will be built until 2019, so we don't have a place for the students to go when we reach maximum capacity at Udinawi. And the families that will be coming in, this will allow families to stay together for either if they're involved in the French track or the English track. So I fully support this, and I really hope that we can get the new school built as fast as we can, and then the students will be able to come back, and because they'll be attending a high school together with the other students in their community. So thank you.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. As a parent, I remember a similar situation happening in the Orchard. The approval to build Alexander's had not gone through as planned, and so students had to be redirected for the next school year, new registrants only. However, they did leave space for siblings of existing students. Will that be happening at Udinawi, so that siblings of existing students will go to school with their brothers and sisters, and new registrants would be people who did not have siblings at the school?
So through the chair to Trustee Collard, we're anticipating that Udinawi will be able to open with all of the students who register for this school year as of September. It will be at some point throughout the school year when people move into the community when their new homes are completed. So those would be new families to the Udinawi community, and it would be those families that would be redirected. So yes, any family that's currently in the community and is eligible to attend Udinawi for September would attend there.
Thank you. I'm sure that relieves many of the community.
Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. I just noticed we need a motion to proceed past 10 o'clock.
Would you like to make that motion? Can I have a seconder? Trustee Amos. Is there any discussion at all? None? It looks like we're going to do this. Sorry, I switched the screen. Trustee Graves?
I was just wondering do we have what the motion is? Do we have a written motion? Or could someone read the motion? No. For this, someone is...
It's for information for next time.
Oh, I thought somebody was making it into a motion, but it's motion past 10. I got confused. I'm sorry. It's because it's past 10. That's why I'm confused.
Okay. Well, I can read a motion. Be resolved that the Halton District School Board extend the meeting beyond 10 p.m. Okay, so we already have Rochelle and Trustee Amos. So there's no more discussion, right? And we don't have it in the appliance, so we're going to have to vote by hand. So all in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And Trustee Gray is no longer on the line, so. Okay, so we are now moving forward. Are there any more speakers at all for Superintendent Reddick?
Whatever. We just need to make sure we note at what point Trustee Gray.
I actually had Director Miller text Manager Courtmaker. Seeing no more speakers, thank you very much, Superintendent Reddick.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are up to number 5.4, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none? Okay, next we're up to the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Vance. I have 3 items, and I'll be turning to my colleagues for 2 of them. I'll start. The trustees need to know that your stretch is far and wide. It goes right across the Atlantic Ocean. When I was in the UK and with Superintendent Podrick, we talked about the Have Your Say survey as one of the things, as one of the items we were talking about. I got an email a short while ago from, her name is Maureen McKenna. She's the Director of Education for the City of Glasgow, wanting to know more about Have Your Say. So I turned to Superintendent Blackwell and Associate Director Bogue, and they provided all sorts of information. She has let me know that they are trying to do their own kind of survey, and they may be the first city in all of the UK doing that. So it was inspired by the people around this table. So I think it's important you know those things. Secondly, I am going to turn to Superintendent Podrick for some really cool news.
It is cool news. It was on the website and tweeted out last night, but on the Mercer report last night, Stewarttown School in Halton Hills was announced as the Canada-wide winner for a contest they run. Rick Mercer runs a charity called Spread the Net, founded in 2006 with Belinda Stronach. And what they do is provide netting to reduce impacts of malaria in African nations. So they raised $27,100, and that's the highest total ever by a school. And the cool part is, so Rick Mercer will be coming to Stewarttown and filming a piece for his show, which is in its last season. So that'll be really great. So just want to congratulate the school. It was great work by everyone because they really took an all-in approach to fundraising. Stewarttown, it's interesting. It's a real positive that started from a tragedy. In 2007, they had the death of a student. And every year they name a charity. And since then, and this year was Spread the Net. And so they really rally around a cause every year and go all in. So we'll get you the date when we know when Rick Mercer's coming to Georgetown.
Thank you, Superintendent Bodger-Barrick. As someone who has had malaria, I can tell you the significance of those nets in supporting people over there. So I will now turn to Executive Officer McFadden on, I believe it's respectful workplaces. Right?
Thank you to the Director. Yes, similar to the request for information from the UK on the Have Your Say survey, we were recently contacted by the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, who has heard about our Respectful Workplace survey and is interested also in seeing that with the a view to possibly having a similar survey in Ottawa. So that is also out there.
And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Next is communications from the chair, and I don't believe I have any, other than I hope everybody has a great March break. Now on to trustee comments and questions. Oh, sorry, committee reports. See, my eyes are getting blurry. It's late. Committee reports. Trustee Pappen.
Thank you. Through the chair, last night SEAC met and Superintendent Sonneveld provided the results from the gifted survey, which were put into a report and presented to SEAC. Following the PAR recommendation, 2 composite schools have been designated for Burlington for the gifted placement. Effective 2020, the review provided information on enrollments, projections, and accommodations. The results and analyses of the survey provided to all Burlington parents and guardians of students with gifted identification in grades 1 to 12, and program equity and opportunity. Superintendent Blackwell provided an MMR Pearson update to the SEAC with regards to special education needs and the alignment of schools, and offering differentiated options to connect with the school. We also had a report on the special education program and services, which looked at elementary special education referrals, identification and placement pathways for students identified with autism, learning disabilities, and giftedness. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, Committee of the Whole met on February 28th, and if I could name it, I guess the theme would have been around wellness. We heard from the mental health team and all of the good and interesting work that's taking place in our system. We also talked about the draft pupil accommodation review guideline and formulated some comments, which now I'm pleased that we'll be writing to the ministry to share those. Then looking forward, our next meeting scheduled for March the 28th, so after everybody's had a good break. And the theme of that meeting is locally developed. And we're going to be hearing from Tammy Hardwick, and I'm not sure if others are coming as well, but to talk about the land acknowledgement, the locally developed land acknowledgement and the First Peoples, and really the significance of that acknowledgement and what it means. I understand we'll be having a LEAP presentation. And then lastly, budget. So that one will be action-packed. And just stay tuned for an email message around the timing of that particular meeting, timing and location. And secondly, environmental management team met yesterday, and I just wanted to highlight that one of the big topics of conversation was around parking lot safety. And there's people that come from all areas of the board, including students on that committee, and it is a concern. And meetings were held with some of the municipalities as well. And coincidentally, I received an email from the town of Oakville that was to be distributed to all families through Trustee Harvey Hope around bylaws and so on around the school. So this is an ongoing issue that hopefully we'll make some progress on. Thanks.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. As co-chair of the Transportation Committee, I'd like to remind everybody there's a document in the cloud that everybody's to put their feedback on by Friday, so I can then share it with the chair so that it can be submitted on behalf of our board with our feedback on the transportation system. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. With respect to next week's committee as a whole, I wonder if we might find some time to discuss trustee distribution at that meeting as well, so that we can have that kind of conversation about oh, right, we're not meeting next week. It's March break next week.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it was an idea, which is not a good one.
Trustee Oliver?
No, we're not. We're still committee reports. Oh, we're still committee reports. Okay. I actually had something that feeds on Trustee Collard's comment. Sure. It'll be under something. Just to follow up on my initial thought of it'd be good to develop some criteria for how we're going to pick a scenario for the trustee allocation or distribution. I do support that we have some discussion about that at a committee of the whole.
Okay, so just to let you know, that'll be actually too late because that's after we vote, which is next. The next committee of the whole meeting is after our next board meeting. So the suggestion could be that people could get together in small groups and discuss things on their own time. But I see no more committee reports. So,
And it's
Director
a hard
Mayor.
date that it has to be into the province by April 3rd. So there isn't a lot of time.
So let's, people seem to want to make some questions and comments. So why don't we move on to that? I just cleared the list. If you could put yourself back on it. Trustee Harvey Hope.
First, I'm wrong. You do have to be a Canadian citizen. You have to be over 18, and you have to have your electoral things sorted out properly. So getting that out of the way. Two, the last trustee determination and distribution report is no longer on the website because we no longer have pre-2015 board agendas. So perhaps that could be recirculated because it's really hard to do a comparison with the last time we did this when, I mean, I think I can find it on my computer at home, but it's not available either to the public or to the newer trustees. So maybe we could find the 4 years ago version of this report. And about the parking thing, getting all the school emails, I got a few copies of that. It's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. One of the things that I would like to stress that I'm really happy about actually is that James W. Hill is getting a new pedestrian crosswalk on the non-crossing guard crossing on the opposite side where there isn't one. So we're getting the new crosswalk, and I couldn't be happier because it's where two different schools of secondary school bus kids congregate, and everybody who lives south of James W. Hill has to cross the street, give or take there. So I'm really happy about that. So there's a big report, and it's been circulated a bit on Facebook about where those new locations are going to be, and a lot of them are around schools. So stay tuned on that, and I would suggest that maybe the trustees and other municipalities try and get a hold of what their municipalities are doing as far as those. Thank you.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. Earlier this week, the Toronto Star had an article in it called Fundraising Widens Gap Between Have and Have Not Students Report. And it's based on a report from People for Education. And I just wanted to highlight it because I think it also feeds into the funding formula. The gap between the most affluent and poorest schools garner for educational extras beyond what the province pays is even wider than before. And these inequities seem to be growing. And research has shown that the group that has the largest disparity in the school funding, so therefore the lowest funding, actually has the biggest barriers to having equity in the public school system. And I think that we are very lucky that we have the Halton Learning Foundation, which helps us provide some of the filler for the gap that is there, because we do have and have not schools. Some schools we have do not have the same ability as some of our other schools for fundraising. And I also think that the government is coming to rely on that fundraising so that to make for our schools to have those better educations. And the fact that we're one of the lowest funded boards in the province, and then with all the fundraising involved, I think that's all part and parcel. And I just wanted to raise it so that trustees and the communities were aware of it, because with us trying to create our fair funding for students, which hopefully will be coming to the board sometime soon, and I just think that this all plays hand in hand with all the pieces of that we're trying to raise awareness for in the government. Thank you.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. My question for the director. Ontario government is providing free overdose kits, the nasal naloxone kits, widely distributed to community organizations, some of which serve youth, and pharmacies, many of which are close to our high schools. I know this has been a topic at the board and a question at the board before, but if you will, please, I would love it if you could, Director, if you could speak again about whether there is any movement in our board to consider this option in our secondary schools to align with what the ministry is doing in this area.
I will begin, and then I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Podgerbarek and perhaps Superintendent Ruddock. The ministry has said very little about schools. They've said about community organizations and community so on. So we have had lots of conversations about it, and some school boards have instituted them. I can tell you that there's some growing pains with some of those school boards. I know of one school board where they brought in naloxone kits into the school, and they're now concerned because it attracted people into the school who were not students of the school. So we've kind of been waiting for some ministry direction around it. And having said that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Podgerbarek.
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, we actually have a broader steering committee looking at this. We've met once, and we have another meeting coming up. And by broader, I mean including the Catholic School Board, public health, police, paramedics, and that sort. The Ministry of Health and the regions are certainly out in front on the issue. We are looking to just problem solve a lot of the pieces, draft an AP, and at least look at it, and then start picking that apart. So that's the work of the committee right now, is to say, if we did this, what would it look like in our schools? Dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and bring it to admin council for a closer look. I'm not sure if Superintendent Ruddock would like to ask something, but we are actively looking at it.
Okay. Did you have a follow-up at all? Okay. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to my fellow trustees. Mental health and well-being continue to be issues of concern for our parent community. And as a trustee rep on the Mental Health Steering Committee, I've been working with Michelle Bates to deliver a presentation on the different strategies and initiatives at HCSB that are aimed both at the students and staff. Initially, I was thinking of just doing it as part of my Super Council and extended it to Oakville Super Council. However, given the importance of the issue and that we do have a program lead that will be presenting, I thought it'd be wise to open it to all of the schools. So with the help of Superintendent Pennyfather, he has posted it to the both the PIC and the council listservs. So some of you might have seen that. I will share the invite directly with you as well, and I welcome you to share that with your with the principals of your both elementary and secondary schools. And it will be hosted on March 20th at oh my goodness, Abbey Park High School at 7 o'clock, 7 to 9. So I'm hoping that, and it's not just council members, I'm hoping that parents will also take advantage of this so that all those who need to hear it will be able to participate and be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other speakers. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Is there any discussion at all?
Never done it, I have to say.
And all in favor? You're going to say no, aren't you? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.